Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, December 16th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. On today's show, remarkable as it seems, we'll discuss the end of the Chiefs' playoff hopes with 3 games remaining on the schedule, and the season-ending knee injury to Patrick Mahomes. It turns out Mahomes, in addition to tearing his ACL, also tore an LCL, that's lateral collateral ligament. The injury occurred late in Sunday's 16-13 home loss to the Los Angeles Chargers, and Mahomes had surgery on Monday, so the recovery begins. Plenty to discuss, and here to talk about these matters are beat writer Pete Sweeney. Hello, Pete.
Hello.
And star columnist Sam McDowell. Hi, Sam.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Hey, Pete, I'd like to take our audience into the Chiefs locker room. You were there. As bad as it was last week after the loss to the Houston Texans, how did this one compare?
Oddly enough, I think it was better as energy-wise compared to last week. And right, like it's stages of grief. Maybe this is just an acceptance of what they were this year. And, I think a few more guys were willing to talk about it. And certainly a level of finality, I think, to the locker room. And it's interesting, right? I mean, we're about to enter a period with Andy Reid that we've never had before, where they're playing for nothing in multiple games. We've not had that since his arrival in 2013. And so I think there was a sadness that came with it, more so last week. And this one was, I think, an accepting locker room. I'm just like, we don't have it, whatever it is this year. And then I think that was also reflective of the elephant in the room, where not only do you have a ton of roster questions, and I think there were certain players wondering if they'll even be here next year, but now you're wondering about the status of your franchise quarterback.
And speaking of the status of the franchise quarterback, Sam, we learned that he had surgery pretty quickly after the injury, I guess within 24 hours. So the recovery begins, but this starts a new era for the Chiefs, so to speak. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with the Chiefs in the offseason, what kind of moves are going to be made. We'll talk about that. But we do know that Mahomes is not going to be part of the offseason, and that's a first.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many questions already about this offseason. I mean, roster-wise, we're still waiting. We're really 2 weeks within a deadline for them to have a stadium announcement of some sort, or at least a decision, or at least, the deadline in Kansas, wants to be by the end of the year. And now all of a sudden this takes the reins here. I mean, when will Patrick Mahomes play again? And I know that there's tons of predictions and suggestions and all that sort, but we don't know. I mean, until he gets deep into this rehab, we're not going to know what kind of timeline he's on. I think there are indications, as Andy Reid said, that this guy works hard, that is, a key part of the component of the rehab, and your timeline is the work that you put in. I don't think there's any doubt that Patrick Mahomes is going to put in the work, but yes, there's a realistic possibility that he's not playing in week 1.
And I think this becomes an audition for Gardner Minshew. It's only on the 1-year deal, and the Chiefs are going to be having to ask themselves some real questions. We saw this year with Mahomes what a slow start can do to your playoff hopes if he can't play. And again, as Sam described, we don't really know, but let's just, for the chatting's sake, say 4 weeks into the 2020. You don't want to be 0-4 when he gets back. Another example is Joe Burrow, just too deep a hole when he got back into the mix this year. And so I think these next 3 games are pivotal for Gardner, both as a legit backup in the NFL, and can he command the offense in such a way where Andy Reid feels comfortable, as Sam was alluding to. Look, you're going to be running OTAs. You're going to be running training camp. Maybe you'll get a start or 2, and that'll be it. Is he the type of guy also that would sign up for that? So I just think there's a lot to be learned in the final 3 weeks, even as they are eliminated from the postseason.
Is he going to be the guy?
I would say no. I think my gut tells me no, but maybe he can change some minds in these next 3 weeks. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, this is going to be a really tough spot for the Chiefs, because that decision will need to be made in March. As far as how much do you invest in a backup quarterback, because is he going to be your backup for the entire 18 weeks, or do you anticipate that you might have to start him, like Pete said, for a month, in which case you need to invest more in this backup quarterback and potentially, like a Jameis Winston type, somebody who could win you some games, or Jacoby Brissett, somebody who could win you some games. But those guys are more expensive backups than Gardner Minshew is, than the whole line of players that the Chiefs have had, than Wentz was, than Chad Henne was, and Blaine Gabbert was. Like, they've gone cheap at this position. They should. But if you're in a spot where you might need a guy for a month, I mean, we saw what the 0-2 start did to this year's Chiefs, and they had Patrick Mahomes during that. Like, it matters getting into the hole that, that Pete described.
Gardner Minshew has won games in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's been a starting quarterback for 4 different teams. Chiefs will be the 5th, and I don't know what his record is, but he has
17-29.
Okay, as a starter for what are the teams? Have you got that?
Yeah, he played for Jacksonville, and we were there.
Yes,
So
his NFL debut.
Nick Foles got knocked out, and you were sort of like, whoa, who is this guy that was, a 7th-round pick, 6th-round pick out of
Washington State. Played for Mike Leach.
And, that was probably his best year, was his rookie year. He threw 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 92 quarterback passer rating, 6-6, then 1-7 in Jacksonville, goes to Philly for 2 years, 1-2 in Philly, Indy for a year, 7-6 in Indy, and then 2-7 last year in Vegas. Other than Philly, Jacksonville gave him a chance to start, Indianapolis gave him a chance to start, Vegas gave him a chance to start. So you got 3 teams that at least thought, hey, this guy could start in this league.
I mean, it's not lost to me that this is the Raiders brass, but this was a player that was benched for Aiden O'Connell. So I think
that's not a good line to lead your resume.
No, my expectations are tempered, to say the least. But again, unlike Carson Wentz, who was working with a ton of backups, you'll get a good look at Minshew over these next 3 games, and
that's a good point. It's a much different environment that he steps into that Carson Wentz steps into.
I think he can earn himself not only a role, but some money, as Sam was saying. I mean, this is going to be a very important position. You're going to be running the team all the way up, I think, ideally for Kansas City until week 1, but you don't even know if that'll be the case.
The other piece of this, Blair, is their offense is struggling now. Their 2 worst offensive games have been their last 2 games, and I actually think that's part of a larger story of this Chiefs team is they got worse as the season went on, and that's not whatever you think of the Chiefs' ceiling last year. I think all of us were pretty consistently saying, 15-1 isn't really how good this team is. They've got some flaws. They were getting better. They revamped their offense late in the season to where their offense was more productive as the season got older last year. This team just got worse as the season went on. And so he does step into a situation with the starters, but he steps into a struggling offense. And now you're changing from Patrick Mahomes to Gardner Minshew. I have my doubts that he's going to be some sort of savior for what this offense has been experiencing in the last couple of weeks.
This is SportsBeat KC. When I think about Mahomes and his recovery, I can't help but recall the Netflix documentary Quarterbacks that was out a couple of years ago. And I forgot who the other quarterbacks were. Wasn't Kirk Cousins one of them?
Yeah,
along with Mahomes
and
Marcus Mariota. But just how hard Mahomes worked out in those. And I imagine he'll attack his recovery in the same way.
Yeah.
So I hope for his sake and for the Chiefs' sake, he's not going to miss 10 months, right, which would take him into next season. But the fact that there was more damage than originally believed, right, with the LCL in addition to the ACL, that has to have you a little worried.
Yeah, and I think that's why the surgery came quicker. Was once there was additional damage to the LCL, but that can extend the timeline. What it really does is extend the work that you need to put in within the timeline that you've already had. But it's one more factor, one more thing that you've got to have checks on and make sure it gets healthy during this rehab process. I guess I would say it's one more thing that has the possibility of slowing you down.
I don't know if I thought it was inevitable that this was going to happen when the game started, but the game started with, as you mentioned it on Press Row, Sam, 3 offensive linemen that were not draft picks, not taken in the draft, including both tackles, right? Mm-hmm. Asapole, Chu, Godric were the tackles, and of course Mike Caliendo at guard. Had to be, by experience, though, well, let's put it this way, the least experienced in terms of NFL games, offensive line the Chiefs may have ever started. And we thought that Mahomes was going to be in trouble. The offense would be in trouble, and it was after the first drive, right? The Chiefs went down for a touchdown. Mahomes capped it with a 12-yard run, but kind of after that, missed opportunities, and just a couple of field goals, and they didn't score in the second half. I believe that's right, didn't they? They were up 13-3 and ended up losing 16-13. So it was not a good. Now, Mahomes didn't get hurt on a play where a guy blew through one of the tackles. As is often the case with ACL injuries, there wasn't a contact on the play, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was bracing for contact, really, and then he gets hit. But he's also none of us in here are medical professionals. I'm curious. He's been dealing with a knee injury for a little while now, and I don't know whether that is potentially something that could get worse, and therefore you saw this injury. But I mean, this guy's dealt with injuries his whole career, and so I've seen a lot of speculation that he's always scrambled more this year. The guy's been scrambling his whole career, and I understand that he's been scrambling slightly more this year. He's put himself in harm's way, particularly early in that September month when the offense was struggling. He felt like he had to almost turn into a running back. I mean, he was a leading rusher through 4 or 5 weeks of the season. I mean, that was a real thing, but I just think we constantly look for cause and effect when I don't think it's necessarily there.
Okay, and we talked about it just a moment ago, but think about this. Now, with the recovery timetable, there's going to be no Camp Mahomes this summer, no heading to Texas with the wide receivers and the tight ends and the running backs for Mahomes to throw to, no OTAs for Mahomes, and with probably an offense that's going to look and be a little different next season.
Yeah, it really, I think, muddles up what the future looks like for the team. And I'll reiterate it. I think something's both that Sam and I said is like, you had a lot of decisions to make as it is. I mean, you think about your top 2 cornerbacks contracts coming up. You have probably you're going to say goodbye to Isaiah Pacheco. Travis Kelce retires. Do you feel like Noah Gray is enough at the tight end position? And now you parlay that with what offensive lineman are you running with? Are you changing up some voices in the offensive staff? Are you changing up what the scheme looks like to an extent here, or neither here nor there? And your starter is not going to be able to work with that all going on until, you get to whenever it is he does return. And so I just think it's a very, very interesting offseason. This is probably the most interesting offseason since Patrick Mahomes took over. And I do have this lingering sense of if anyone can handle this, not having the reps and just jumping right back in the mix, it is somebody like Patrick Mahomes, but they'll be certainly a fascinating part of the 2026 season.
Okay, let's take a break and get into that thought a little bit more on the other side. We're back on SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. We're here with beat writer Pete Sweeney and star columnist Sam McDowell. Sam, is this a multi-year fix for the Chiefs?
I think it is. And the reason being is like all of their off-season moves, which, I was critical of some of them. I mean, their off-season seemed to be about bringing everybody back, no matter the cost. And Trey Smith, the most expensive right guard in the league, and Nick Bolton, the top 5 off-ball linebacker in the league in terms of finances. But that helped them this year. Like, the bill is due on that next year and the year after. And so, yeah, I mean, they're already over the cap for next year. And, it's a projected cap, but, they've in the past have pushed money forward, and I don't know how much longer you can do that. And I think that this Mahomes injury is going to dictate a lot of that potentially. And, Travis Kelce's future, and I don't think any of us really expect that he'll be back, but Like Pete said, there's so many decisions to make, but not a lot of money with which to make those decisions.
The draft suddenly becomes more interesting for the Chiefs than
I was thinking about this. It's their most important draft pick since Patrick Mahomes, wherever they go with it.
As of now, they are 13th, penned in at 13.
what would you project if they go 2-1 in their last 3 games and finish 8-9?
You'd probably be somewhere around
That would go up a little.
late teens. I don't
get mid to late teens.
This is just, we're at a place that we always like sort of look from afar and laugh at other NFL teams. You're better off losing these 3 games. I mean, there's no other way to say that, right? Like, but the Chiefs are not going to do that under Andy Reid. You already heard Chris Jones saying,
this will be the game they figure out the fourth quarter.
Right. We need to finish strong.
What did Andy say on Monday? This is America. That's what we do.
To me, it's not like if they were to lose out now, I mean, you're in the top 10 and it helps you in the rest of the draft because you're picking at the front end. And how often could you say that about a team that has a quarterback, granted injured right now? We expect them to be back, right? But how many times can you say, man, this top 10 team who's probably about to restructure their quarterback for the long term has a top 10, and again, let's say they go 1-2 against these teams. It's hard to imagine they don't go 2-1, but top 15, and as Sam was sort of nudging there, that can do wonders for, if you nail the picks, that could do wonders for cost control and what your team looks like as you move on.
Did you? Andy Reid yesterday mentioned the fact that they had not been picking in. That they've been picking at the back end of every draft, that they don't have a lot of free agent dollars. We haven't heard him make excuses like that.
First time I ever heard him say something like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was revealing.
I thought it was too. And look, he's not wrong about that. I mean,
correct.
I mean, it is, their job is harder. The NFL is, it's built to not have this sort of era that the Chiefs have had because of those things that he mentioned. It's a salary cap league. You pick at the back end of the average draft, and the schedule is loaded towards, the teams, although somehow Tennessee's played the hardest schedule in the league this year. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of reasons that this type of run shouldn't happen. He's not wrong about that. It stuck out with me that he mentioned it because he's never mentioned something like that before.
And it's part of that parity thing that he always says. The NFL is brilliant in that way. I mean, there's so much turnover of, unless you're a fan of the New York Jets, your team has a really good chance of making the playoffs, like every year seemingly, because of the cap. It caps off how many good players you can keep. They're done with their contracts unless they're a first rounder after 4 years. Now you have to pay a guy, and so, even as the salary cap goes up, it becomes tougher and tougher to navigate and sustain success. I look at the Rams. I mean, the Rams fell right off after they won their championship, but there is, these 2-year soft rebuilding periods, which I kind of anticipate for the Chiefs here.
I like that example of the Rams. They may be the best team in the NFL this year, and every third or fourth year they're in that conversation as the best team. And of course, they won a Super Bowl and have been to a Super Bowl since 2017, I believe. So, not a bad example, the LA Rams.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a while now that the Chiefs should be looking at the Rams. I mean, the Rams do something the Chiefs don't, which is they stockpile draft picks. They don't worry as much about it being a first-round pick. They just try and get picks. And I think that the Chiefs' success in the later rounds, even more so than their early rounds, should make them look at that model and think, you know what, let's just get more lottery tickets. And you're going to have more ammo to potentially make some moves in the draft than you have in the. I don't think we're going to be talking about the Chiefs moving up this year. I'll put it that way. They don't have the same. I mean, you're already going to be in the top half of the draft.
I think about the draft like this: if an impact defensive lineman is a priority, which I think it should be.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Then in past years, the Chiefs were looking at maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th player on that list.
Yeah.
And now they may be in a position to have the 2nd or 3rd player on that list. And then you pull the trigger and go get that guy, whereas they did not do that in previous drafts. But I also think about Trent McDuffie and what are they going to do with him, and would he be worth a couple of draft picks, a 1 and a 3 or so.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's been interesting about these past couple of weeks. I mean, they've trialed what their defense would look like without Trey McDuffie. And you look at the difference between what they did this offseason and what they did prior to their previous 2 Super Bowls is this year they kept all their stars. Before they won their last 2 Super Bowls, they traded their biggest star with Tyreek Hill in the same situation. And they really need to evaluate big picture strategy in the offseason, and nothing stands out more big picture than what you do with Trent McDuffie.
I think Patrick Mahomes would probably be the last person that wants to hear this, but I think you got to shift your attention to 2027. And I think part of that is, do we want to sign a Trent McDuffie to a mega deal when we can take maybe 2 years worth of shots on defensive backs again, and then spend that money elsewhere? Maybe it is once you restructure, impactful free agent that maybe you couldn't have had in previous years. Maybe it is taking a guy, let's say, in the top 15 and trading out. And just as Sam was alluding to, and we hear all the time, just stockpiling picks and taking more shots. I mean, one of their best years, if not their best year, was when they took the 5 defensive backs that Dave Merritt eventually called the Fab Five, and it just felt like it went from one end of the spectrum with your defensive back room to the other, where you felt really good about it. And I mean, I just think there's a lot of positions that they need to throw a few darts at.
When they had extra picks.
Because of the Tyreek Hill trade.
Yes, and they had extra picks. I mean, that draft could look a lot different if rather than taking Trent McDuffie and Karlaftis in the first round, you only had 1 first-round pick. You're only taking Karlaftis. The second round is Sky Moore and Brian Cook if you're only taking Sky Moore, who you took first there. And, the 7th round, you get Jalen Watson, Isaiah Pacheco, and Najee Johnson. I mean, it helps to have more picks. You get to throw more darts at the board.
What is the future of the running back position?
It better not look like the present. I mean, that's the main thing. I mean, I was going through some of the numbers today, actually, just looking at their running game and see if I can pull some of them up here, because it's startling how bad that they're running back. They have faced the most light boxes in the league, meaning teams defend the run against them less frequently than literally any other team in the NFL. Half of their runs come against light boxes. It's even higher on first and second down. A lot of their non-light boxes, because they play third and short. Yet they're 23rd in the league in yards before contact, 25th in the league in yards after contact. They're 31st in the league in avoided tackles. They're 32nd in the league in explosive yards. One of only 4 teams in the NFL without an explosive rushing touchdown all year. And the biggest thing that stands out to me is all this was foreseeable. We talked all offseason about the fact that they did not have enough at the running back position. That's really come to fruition. And I think it's one of the reasons that Patrick Mahomes' job was so difficult this year, is you didn't have a run game to supplement him.
Yeah, the running back room is made up of, right now, 3 number 2s, and you could even make a case that Brashard Smith is a gadgety number 3. They don't have a number 1. And so I think that has to be more of a priority than it was last offseason. I think there was optimism that Isaiah Pacheco could return to what he was, and when he was running over that garbage can in the preseason, kind of looked like, okay, maybe he can, and just another injury this year, retaining him as a non-option. I could see them maybe trying to keep Kareem, who's been pretty good, but he needs to be in that third down role. He's just too old to be having these games where he has all of these carries. And, I think it could be even a mid-round running back, and you also get an undrafted guy you like. They've been really good late with identifying talent. I mean, that's what Pacheco was when he was good at the beginning of his career. And so I think maybe even you take 2 shots, and maybe it's a mid-round back, maybe it's a late draft pick, undrafted free agent you like, or maybe it's a mid-round pick and you hit on a veteran. They weren't able to hit on Elijah Mitchell. And so, I agree with Sam's notion that it just needs to look a bit different.
I really thought he was going somewhere else when he brought up the garbage can, but
okay. Not my game.
Just invest in the position. That's one thing they haven't done. They have not invested in the position. 7th round picks and off the couch guy. And so, put money into the position. How about if this is a multi-year fix, what does the wide receiver room look like in a couple of years? Because that's been disappointing.
The number one question is, do you want to pay Rashee Rice? And it's tough based upon all the, I think, information that you have. I think he's going to want a new contract. I'm sure this situation he went through off the field was not a cheap venture for him. And so I think there's going to be some of that motivation there. Did you get enough? Did you see enough this year for what you thought he might be, what salary he may command? And then, you're also weighing some of the other stuff. So I think it starts with him. Yeah, I mean, especially with if we do see Travis Kelce right off into the sunset, what are we talking about for next year? I don't think Hollywood Brown will be back. Xavier Worthy, I think to an extent, and part of that was the injury. I felt like he was a little worse this year as far as a reliable target. So that is just yet another question about what this team looks like in 2026 and beyond.
Is there anything to glean from these final 3 games besides Gardner Minshew's performance?
Yeah, and I think you've got some other guys in the similar realm. Like, if Esapole has to play, you're looking at 4 or 5 games. I will say this whole thought of, play the young guys. I mean, Andy Reid said it. I'm like, they are.
That's right. They already. That's happening.
Yes. Like, I was trying to think of guys who I really like to see. This isn't baseball. Like, we're at September call-ups and hey, give this guy 100 at bats in September. This is the NFL where you play your most talented players already. So, I mean, sure, I don't think we need to see a lot of Isaiah Pacheco. I don't know how much we need to see a Kareem Hunt. But, I agree with Pete that I think Brashard Smith is more of a gadget player. Maybe you still give him some more carries just to see what you have there. But I was really trying to come up with a list over the last 24 hours on Esapole, Brashard Smith. I mean,
Jalen Royals, maybe?
I'd like to see Jeff Basso within, the
Jeffrey Basso, the linebacker.
And I also think, and we've seen a bit of him, but more Noel Williams. I think if McDuffie feels a little banged up, make him inactive. Learn what you have, and because this information, everything else right now, winning even hurts you. So everything else right now is research for you. Take advantage of that. I'm not, I do think the Chiefs will still come out and try to win the game. I'm not saying that, but I just think there's a lot that you can be learned in real live football games, even if it is against the Titans, Raiders, and maybe the Broncos not playing anybody.
It was telling that Cochran came in the game during the brief time that Nick Bolton was out, rather than moving Tranquil to the middle and putting Bass in the game. Because everything we heard about Jeff Basso is that the reason they got him was how smart he was.
Right. He had the Nick Bolton qualities.
Yes. And so I didn't think that he would need a redshirt year in the NFL just to get on the field in a spot situation where Nick Bolton misses a handful of plays. That was pretty telling to me. I think when we saw him at camp in preseason, he was undersized for a linebacker. And so I don't know that concern is what has prompted him he's played less than 50 defensive snaps.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just of the notion now, if you're on the injury report and you're a veteran, do you need to play? I mean, if these are returning veterans on your team, let them get right, even if it's just an additional 3 games less wear and tear. And I just think that data, if Rashee Rice is on the injury report, he did practice fully last week, but he has a hamstring. Find out what you have in Jalen Royals. Now's the time, right? This is a grand experimental gift in a way for what 2026 will be.
It'll be interesting covering these final 3 games because they are 3 games that we have not had to experience with the Chiefs, or the Chiefs have experienced in the Andy Reid era. Think about that. Ever since he became the head coach in 2013, these are the most inconsequential games in terms of the Chiefs and their playoff position. Okay, great conversation. Thank you, Pete Sweeney and Sam McDowell. Here's what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. The NCAA Volleyball Championship comes to Kansas City on Thursday. The national semifinals at T-Mobile Center are set, and they do not include a pair of number 1 seeds. Nebraska and Texas were upset in the regional finals. So here's how it lines up. Texas A&M, which beat the Huskers, will take on Pittsburgh at 5:30 p.m. And in the second game, Wisconsin, which took out the Longhorns, will meet Kentucky at 8. The championship match is set for Sunday at 2:30. By seed, the favorites are Pitt and Kentucky. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC staff of Gabriella, Lacey, Suzanne Hogan, Irvin, Zhang, and Monty Davis, and to our editors, Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.